Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Enhance Esri Basemaps through the Community Maps program. We have a full hour ready for you and we're really excited, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Carissa Schrader and I am joined here with our guests, Mike Ridland and Seth Sarakatis. And our webinar today is going to be focusing on the Community Maps program and how you can get started in joining us in adding data to our base maps and contributing to the Living Atlas. So walking through the agenda here, we are going to go over Living Atlas base maps in the Community Maps program. We're going to talk about the different ways that you can enhance the base map, including providing base map feedback, as well as adding details with the editor app. We're going to talk about sharing data with the contributor app as well and wrap things up with questions. So please feel free to use that chat window in your panel so that you can ask us any questions that you might have. And in addition, we do have a survey link that you can fill out to provide us with more information to help us to better understand how we can serve you through the Community Maps program. This webinar will be recorded and it will be shared with you. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Mike and Seth, and let's kick things off.
Okay, thank you, Carissa. Thank you. Fantastic. Hi, everybody. My name is Seth Sarakatis. I'm with Mike Ridland. We are part of the Community Maps program team, and we have got a real fun agenda and a fun presentation to give to you today. We're going to do kind of a tour or a journey of the Community Maps program, but really it's more of an adventure.
I'd say it's the best webcast you're going to attend all day.
Yeah, you're going to tell all your friends about this later. And I'm assuming that we've got on the phone, we've got people that know what Community Maps, the program is. We probably have people that have been part of the program for it's almost 10 years that it's been a program at Esri. But I'm assuming we also have some new people, some people that may not know what the program is, and this is going to be kind of an introduction to them also. But for the time that we've had Community Maps, the program has had a single goal, and we've held to that, and it's to enhance these what we call foundation layers, like the base maps and things that really help the user community really engage with the ArcGIS platform. And so, the program started with the base maps, and everybody uses these base maps. I'm sure many of you have used them today in your work. And really, this is going to be a big focus of today's conversation. But we do have other communities like imagery, where we're enhancing the World Imagery Service. We're enhancing the geocoding experience within ArcGIS. The elevation and the 3D experience, and then an interesting community of stream gauges. But with the takeaways for today that we really want to focus on is the goal of the program is to improve these foundation layers, improve the base map, make them better. And we do have three distinct ways that you can participate. And that's really what we want is users to participate. And you can do this by telling us what's wrong. And there's a feedback mechanism. We're going to go into each one of these in detail. You can show us by creating features in the editor app, and you can send us data. And that's the more traditional Community Map contributor. But the key to this, and one website that we're going to hit a couple times during this adventure, is our landing page, and that's communitymaps.arcgis.com. So a little illustration about this tell us, show us, send us. And this is kind of setting the stage for what you're going to see. When we talk about telling us things, it's feedback. It's very distinct things that are happening in your community that you're noticing that you can help us improve the map by telling us, like a street was renamed. The show us concept is that you can build and add missing detail and actually missing features onto the map. And we're gonna demonstrate this a little bit with our editor app. And then again, if you are a curator or a creator of data layers, you're going to be able to still share that content with us and improve those base maps. So those are the three kind of areas, and we're going to go into each one of those. And I'm going to now kind of bounce it over to Mike and let Mike kind of take it from here. So go ahead, Mike.
Great. Well, thanks, Seth. Thanks for sort of laying out the foundation here. Here's just a simple graphic of the landing page that we affectionately call the bubble page, because it's got the three types here: tell, show, and send. And what I'm going to do is just begin with the first piece, which is the feedback maps. This is the most basic, simple type of feedback that you can provide. And you sort of identify where there's an issue and you tell us what's wrong. You do that through a series of online maps, and I'm going to show that to you in just a second. But first, I'm going to show you the basic process. You're going to go into one of these feedback maps. You're going to click the edit button. You're going to draw a box around something that is wrong, and then you're going to fill out a form that says what's wrong with it. And once you click OK and you're done with that form, Esri curators are going to take a look at what you just put in and make a change however is needed. So what I'd like to do actually now is just show you what we're talking about. So I'm going to jump out of here and open a browser real quick. And here's just our landing page for our program. This is the three: provide, feedback, edit, and share data. If you were to click on this provide feedback, you're going to go to this collection of feedback maps. And here, notice that you can provide feedback on the vector base map or the street maps or imagery. You know, there's a couple of choices for where you might provide that feedback if it was specific to one of our base maps. Now, what I'm going to do is go over here to the vector base map feedback. And what I would normally do is I would sign in over here. Just for the sake of time, I'm not going to do that. Whoops. But when you sign in, that gives us a chance to ask you questions. So we sort of can work with you if we have questions about that. Nevertheless, for this demo, I'm going to just sort of go to this area where I know that there's a change needed, and that's near the University of Houston. So if I type in the University of Houston, it's actually in the downtown area. So what I'm doing is I'm just sort of, I know where there's an issue. I'm going to zoom into it. And in this particular case, let me zoom in just a bit more. We have a kind of an interesting thing that's happening in society with some of our railway lines being converted to walking paths. So in this example, what's happened is that little greenway area that you see just north and east of the river a little bit, there's some changes. So what I'm going to do is do two edits, basically, two feedback, I should say, pieces of feedback. And the first one, I'm going to zoom in a bit more, and that's this sort of northern piece of the Union Pacific Railroad that actually is no longer in existence. So I'm going to go ahead and click the edit button. There we go. I'm going to click open issue, and I'm going to maybe zoom out just a touch more. And at this point, all I need to do is just start clicking and drawing a box around something that's wrong. So I want to try to get, decent with my box. It doesn't have to be perfect, but good enough. And then I'm encountering this add comment. So basically, I just fill out this form. So in this example, this is a, whoops, it's not modified, clicked the wrong thing. It is a delete, and the description of the error is that this railroad, I'm going to try and be quick here, this portion of railroad no longer exists. Okay, and which map? This probably occurs in multiple maps, so I'm going to click multiple. And then when I click away from it, I've just basically made that edit. Edit meaning that piece of feedback. So if I click on it, it'll pop back up with what it was. It's kind of neat. Now, the second thing I would want to do is let me zoom out a little bit more and then provide some feedback on that other segment. This is that piece of railroad that has actually been converted into a trail, like a walking path. So I'm going to provide a suggestion on there where I click edit. Whoops, let me do that again. Open issue. And now I'm just going to draw a little bit bigger box around here. And I want to try and get pretty good about this. I'm not spending as much time as Seth's going to show you when he works with the editor app. But nevertheless, this is a modify feature because it's not a railway anymore. And the description of air, what I'm going to just say is that this railroad segment was converted to and then I actually know the name of the trail. So White Oak Bayou Greenway Trail. Now, notice that I took enough time to be more specific about this description, and you don't want to say things like oh, this name has changed without giving us the actual name of the change. So you want to be really specific. And if you had a URL that you wanted to point to that had that trail map, you definitely include that here as well. And that's going to include multiple maps. So there, I've done it. I've provided 2 bits of feedback. The tips here are you want to be very descriptive. You don't want to draw a really big box and then say something changed. You want to say like what it was that changed, and then give URLs whenever possible. So the more detail, the faster it's going to get changed in the base map for us. So I'm going to turn this back over to Seth in a second, but I guess Carissa mentioned a survey, and I just want to point that out to you that we do have this survey looking for your feedback on this. And I want to tell this to you now because we're looking for other suggestions on topics, but also we have oh, look at this. We have a raffle, and Seth's going to give away some cars, I think. No, actually, we're picking 5 people to get t-shirts, not cars. And so we really want your feedback on this. It's anonymous unless you tell us who you are, but please let us know. Let me jump back here to the bubble to remind you that we just talked about this left-hand provide feedback bubble, and now I'm going to go back and turn it over to Seth, who's going to talk about the editor app.
All right, thank you, Mike. Again, exciting stuff and good feedback. We really appreciate that. So I'm going to take this to this next level and talk about something that's new to community maps. And we've always had the ability to provide feedback for many years. It may not have been front stage like this. And we've also had the ability to share your data. But we've had a lot of organizations that want to create the detail, the level of detail that they see in the base map in other areas for their own community. And so they've asked us for templates, and they've asked us for methodologies. And instead of creating templates, we thought we'd bridge that gap by creating an application. And so the Community Maps Editor app is a web-based application that you can use to add detail and actually create features into the map. And it does require an ArcGIS online organization account. So these are only named users that can actually go in and create features. So it kind of limits the number of features or organizations that can create these. But let me set a little bit of context about why we're doing this. And this could be a park in many of your organization's community. And this just means that we're showing a park with a green polygon, and there's definitely many features that are in this park. And in fact, this one even has some trails and some buildings. But if this was your campus or your local park and it was missing the level of detail that we really want in the maps, this is the ability to add it. And this is an actual example that we've used the editor app to create the baseball fields, the running tracks, the soccer fields, and the parking. And so it creates this very detailed level of base map. So with that, let's just look at it. Let's check it out. I think we talk about it enough. So we're at the communitymaps.arcgis.com landing page. We click on the edit features, and we're going to go to a group. And if you're not part of this group, there is a button at the top for you to join this group. And you click it, and you're automatically joined. And then you'll get access to the information that's in the actual group itself. And so I can access the app from here. Now I've gone ahead and kind of jumped forward a little bit, and I've opened the application. And so here is the Community Maps editor, how it gets started. And it just opens up to the world right now. And it's a pretty simple to use application. There's not a whole lot of buttons on it. The way that someone would use this is they would go in and they would find their location. And I'm going to go to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and I can do a find, and it'll find that location, and it'll zoom me into that. So it's just doing a geo search for that location. And I found a location that really makes sense to add detail. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit to this. And you'll see that I've actually kind of started this demonstration a little bit by starting to create what we call an area of interest. And that is something that you have to create first before you can create anything. But let's look at what's there. So I can switch the maps from the existing view, which is this is what it looks like right now in the base map, to the editing view. And this is just the imagery map. Now you can see that there is a campus here. And this is a great little middle school. It's got a building, it's got some sports facilities around it. I think it makes sense that we add the McKinley Middle School to the map. And so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go through this exercise just to demonstrate how I create features. So I hit the create button and I hit choose. This opens a panel that has the list of the items that we can create. And there's quite a few. The first thing that I notice when I look at this school is that most of it is grass. Now, obviously, there's some buildings and there's some sidewalks and sports features, but most of it is grass. Let me just show you what I'm going to do first. I'm going to create an entire grass feature that basically encompasses the entire campus. So you'll see that because I had an area of interest drawn around the campus, that grass feature was clipped to it. And so now I've got this entire area planted with grass. Obviously, I'm not going to leave it that way because there's more detail to be done. So I'm going to zoom in just a step. I'm going to show how I can change the transparency of that landscape so that I can see through the grass a little bit easier. I can do my digitizing inside this area. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create some of these sidewalk features that go around the building. And this is a really interesting way of creating features. So first thing I'm going to do is go to create. I'm going to go to choose. And I'm going to go to another category we call hardscape. And that's basically the built features like the sidewalks. So I'm going to start my feature out here. And I'm going to start digitizing my feature on top of the imagery. Let me just use my scroll mouse and I can zoom in a step. So that's kind of a productivity tip. And I can start digitizing this feature. And so let me make sure it clicks. There it goes. The next thing I want to show as a productivity tip, and it's really an enhancement, is that I'm drawing straight lines right now. But by using the letter M, like Mike, on my keyboard, I can change the line type to be a curve. And so I'm going to change so I can have that curvature of that. And I can use the M key to toggle right back to a straight line. Another productivity tip is that I can use the arrow keys on my keyboard to navigate the map while I'm creating features. And so I've just kind of navigated to recenter a little bit. The next productivity tip, and these are what we call hotkeys, I can use my spacebar. My spacebar is going to turn on some hints or some tips while I'm digitizing, it's showing me where I'm drawing at right angles. And right angles are so important in our world out here in creating features. So I'm just going to go and digitize this feature, and I'll show you what I'm doing. I'm creating a feature that encompasses the whole thing. Now, I want to make sure, even while I'm creating this feature, I can make sure that I am cutting this feature. So this feature is going to be cut into the grass that we first laid down. So just by using the hotkeys, I'm just going to kind of toggle back and forth, and I'm going to pan around to create this feature. And you'll see that, again, I'm at right angles. The lines are looking very good. I can switch back to a curve to finish off this feature. And I can make that curve. And then I'm just going to go ahead and kind of little quickly finish off this feature to kind of demonstrate what I'm doing here. Is I'm creating one large sidewalk feature, and watch what happens when I create this. So I double click to finish, and it cuts that feature into the interior of that grass. And so then what I would do is I would continue to create and choose. This time I'm going to go back to grass to make this feature. Okay, so I'm going to start in the inside here. I'm going to use my curve command again to kind of curve around this feature. You see I did 2 curves to make it all the way around, and then go back to my straight line. This is really cool. It'll show me what my right angle is. I think that's really neat. And it'll give me back to the curve, go back to straight, double click, and that feature is now cut into that. I'm going to do it one more time just to kind of illustrate a little bit more. And we're going to go into this feature, go back to a curve, go back to the point here and double click. And you'll see I'm cutting the grass into that sidewalk. So that's a really interesting way to be productive with creating features. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create this building. So I go to create, I go to choose. My category is building, and I'm going to start creating this building. Now I'm going to make sure it's in a straight, using straight lines and using right angles. So I've got my tips on, and I'm going to just go around the edge of this building to create this feature. Now, if I were to make a mistake, oops, I made a mistake, I can just use the undo. That is a really good tip. And you can undo all of your steps within your session that you've done. And so if you made a mistake, you can go back and then you can redo some of those. So I'm just going to continue to add this building in. Go down to this area here. And I'm kind of finishing this up. And when I really create these features, I'm very patient with my digitizing, make sure everything's correct. So now I've got that building cut into the sidewalk. So you see how I'm kind of creating these features. One of the interesting things I want to do here, just to kind of show a little bit more of the capabilities, is I've got the front entrance of this building, and I want to show that. I want to actually put that into the map. So what I'm going to do is use the add function, and I've got the building selected, and I'm going to add and use the cut function. And watch what happens when I do this. So I start out here, and I start to digitize this little stoop or the entrance. And as I start to get to the end and double click, it's basically adding that feature onto the feature that I selected, so I can get that detail. One of the things I like to do while I'm creating these features is to go back to the base map and look at my features. I like to go back just to kind of see what it is that I've been creating. And so this, I'm starting to create the map, and I think it's really starting to come together. Now, there was a couple of other features in this imagery that I thought were kind of interesting, and I wanted to showcase those. First is this hard court that's right to the north of the school. That's another feature category, so I can go to sports and choose hard court. And I'm going to go ahead and just digitize this feature into the map by using my snaps and things. There it goes, and it's cut in. So there, I've got another feature. And then another thing I'm going to do right here is I've got these tennis courts. In many of our maps, especially these campuses, will have these type of features. And so I want to show a really kind of interesting way of creating this. So right now, some of you that are following very closely will know that this is grass. So it's obviously not grass, but that's what I'm representing it right now in the map. What I'm going to do is do something we call split by polygon. And I'm going to digitize this polygon out of here. And again, I got my right angles on, so it's being very detailed about this rectangle that I'm drawing. And I double click. And so I've basically just taken a cut of that grass, and it's still grass. If I look at the properties, I can see that it's still grass. But it's unique here because I can change this to a sports feature, and then I can change it to the category I want. Now I want it to be this red athletic track or exterior of the tennis court because it's red in the map, in the real imagery. So let's continue this. Let's keep adding features. Next thing I'm going to do is add the interior of our tennis courts. So I can create, choose, and I go to interior tennis court as my category, as my type. Now, this is where I can get really productive. And this is where, my boss is going to love how fast I'm doing this, because I'm going to be very detailed on this first feature while I cut this feature in. And then while it's selected, I'm going to use the copy and paste. Now it's put into the clipboard, and after it's in the clipboard, I have the ability to then move it into position and hit new. I feel like I'm selling pots and pans on an infomercial because this is so easy. The food is not sticking to this. So this is how to be really productive, okay? Now, some of the maps that you may have seen in some of these areas with the tennis courts, there are lines that are drawn on top of the tennis courts. And I want to show a really interesting thing that the editor app has for drawing these lines. So I can go to choose. This is a different line category called sports field and line. Think of these as the paint or the chalk lines that would be on sports fields. So I've got these interior lines, and I could just draw them, I guess. I could do each one as individual lines, but that's not very productive. We have what we have on the left here called stencils. And so these are pre-rendered, pre-designed graphics that are in the application. We've got some that are very basic for parking lots. We've got some that are numbers and letters. These might be really interesting. We've done some high school football fields where there's some really interesting, you can put words of the sports team. And then we've got some sports things, and we've got American football and Canadian football, field hockey. We've got tennis courts down at the bottom. And so the way I use these is I drag the stencil onto the map, and obviously it comes in, and it's not to scale. And so I have to rotate it into position, and then I need to scale this item and into the map. And so I just kind of drag it. It's a graphic right now, so don't think of it as a feature yet. It's only a feature once I commit it. Now, I'm going to be very particular about this, and I tell people that I'm very kind of particular on making sure I get it right because of the same concept of copy and paste. So once I got into position, I used the arrow button on the right, and that commits that to a feature. Now that's a sports line feature. While it's selected, I'm just going to copy and paste that feature off to the other courts and kind of put it into position and hit new. So again, I'm being productive by using these tools. And let's just switch back to our base map and look at what this looks like. I'm going to change the transparency a little bit of the grass so it kind of turns up a little bit. And we'll zoom out. You can see that just in a few minutes that I've been able to create much of this campus. And I would just kind of carry on with that same workflow for many of these features and build out the rest of this campus. Now, a couple of things that as I kind of finish up here, I want to highlight. One is that there is a help panel that's on the left, and we've got some frequently asked questions, and then we've got some really interesting articles about how to use the application. And I really recommend that when you're in here, you start reading these, because I mentioned a couple of these productivity tools like hotkeys. And this article kind of shows you how these hotkeys can be utilized in the application for creating athletic tracks, baseball fields, and building footprints. So really a helpful thing. So I'll kind of wrap this up by just going back to the group that was in ArcGIS Online for the editor app. We expect that you'll just sign back in and you'll go to this group to continue working. The next day you'll go back in. In the application, there's no saving. You don't have to save. It's being automatically saved. So as I close this, these features are now in the map, or at least they're in the service that our team will then start looking at and approving and putting into the base maps. But the last thing is there is a lesson that we put together just before the user conference. So it's only a couple of weeks old, and it's very helpful to learn these techniques. We've got some instructions on how to step-by-step create campus features in an environment that doesn't save, it doesn't, you can make all the mistakes that you want. And then when you go back to create your campus, you're going to be armed with all of these fantastic skills to create your campus. So with that, I'll kind of bounce this back over to Mike, who's then going to pick up and take us through the last piece, which is sharing data.
Yes, thank you, Seth.
Let me go ahead and get the presentation back up.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. And what was really terrific about that was I had showed you the feedback where you draw a simple box, and then Seth is showing you the editor app where you actually digitize things into its own layer. And here's the third piece. So let's say you have the data already. Now this share data piece is really meant for authoritative data. So it wouldn't be something that you just sort of thought would be okay. This is something where you're a city or a county or some sort of authority, and you register for the program, and you say you're going to provide these layers, and then we basically say, great, send them to us. Now, those layers, once you're in the sort of ready to contribute, you can provide those through services or through just a geodatabase. So let's just look real quick. Again, this scenario is, you didn't want to draw a feedback box around a whole city that said it needed buildings, and you didn't want to go into the editor app and edit all the buildings to add them. Instead, you had the layer already and you were the city. So if that were the case, we would say, just send us the layer. You still own it, it's yours, but you basically say, yeah, let's just put it in the map so everyone else can benefit from that richness of the base map. So the steps in general here, and again, I'm going to walk through a little demo, is you register and then you log into this contributor app. You say where you want to source your layer from. You tell us about the layer somehow through the parameters or the properties. You upload the data, and then once we get it, we take a look at it, review it, and then integrate it, and then eventually publish it into the base map. So that's the general step. What I want to do is just jump out of this and do the demo. So again, this is the bubble, the share data bubble. Once I log in, once I click that, let me see, Seth, I think I have, no, that was where you were. That was where you were. Here we go. So when I click that, and I'm sort of jumped ahead a little bit where I've already registered and I've logged in as my account here using the contributor app. And I just want to show you a couple of things within the app. One of the things is you have lots of help. So there's a tips and tricks document. There's also some videos that hopefully really help get you started, or even give you some tricks and tips through a video. One of the things that you can do is sort of administer your own account, and that's with this My Account tab. When I look at this, you do tell Esri what layers you're going to contribute, and those are called registered layers. So if you want to take a look at what you've signed up for, you can see in this case, you're providing municipal boundaries, you're providing footprints, roads, center lines, points of interest, water bodies, and some other things that are buried in these other expand categories. Let's say you didn't know what some of these were, like what are parcels? You could click on the question mark and that pops up a little help that tells you what it is. Parcels are fairly self-explanatory, but there might be some other ones in there that you just didn't know what we were talking about or whether or not you had that layer type. So the other thing here is looking at this little service icon. And what that service icon says is that that layer in particular is available to be provided in the form of a service, which is really nice. And I'm going to demo that in just a second as well. So let's say I did want to include parcels. I could go ahead and click the checkbox, and then I could come down and save my changes. And speaking of scrolling down, there's a section down here that talks about your subscriptions. So what the heck are those? Well, if you do provide something in the form of a service, you can say how often, or you can recur that, I should say. So, tell Esri that you want to give municipal boundaries every 6 months. So we'll go out every 6 months and refetch your latest version of that from your service. So that's what we mean by a subscription. So you can manage these subscriptions down here, and notice, I'll come back to this in a second, but there is a municipal boundary service subscription already set up. So if I go and sort of walk through the new contribution piece here, I'm back to this sort of main page, and I click on the contribute data now. What I want to just direct your attention to is a left and right side of this interface. On the left side, we have the layers. So these are all the layers that you had checked in that My Account tab. And then you're going to tell us what format you would like to provide it to us in, a zip file of a geodatabase feature class or a service. Now, on the right-hand side, this right side wakes up once you pick your choice of format, and that's where you'd say the parameters. So for instance, if I had building footprints in the form of a zip file and I clicked zip, that would wake up this right-hand side and ask you to choose the file that contains the zip. Now, you wouldn't just take your geodatabase and then just zip it up and send it to us without first getting it ready for faster processing. So that's what this pre-processing with data prep tools piece is down here. And when you were to click on that, it is a ArcGIS Online item that is a downloadable set of tools that you would use in either Pro or ArcMap to pre-process your data. You run the tool against your building footprints. That sets up the properties, that sets up the schema. And so when you're ready to use that and send it to us, it goes into our system that much faster, and more importantly, it helps us publish faster. And I think you want that. So that's what you should do. There we go. All right, so I'm not going to do that right now for the sake of time, and instead I'm going to demo the ability to use services. So I'm going to do two different things here. The first is I'm going to show you about water bodies, providing that as a service. So when you choose the service format, it wakes up this right-hand side, and you can see that you have two choices for service. One is an ArcGIS Online service, something you might have hosted already in ArcGIS Online, and the other is going to be a server service. And I'm going to show you both of those right now. So let's just say, for the sake of getting this, first we'll choose the ArcGIS Online choice. And here, when you say select service, all that's happening, and I'll scroll down a bit, is it's fetching services out of your ArcGIS Online account. That's the same account that you logged into the Community Maps contributor app with. So we know the services associated with your account, and of course my list is going to be way different from your list because these are just all my testing things. But anyway, you see from your list a icon that says something's publicly shared, an icon that says it's not shared, and then an icon that says it's shared with a group. So it does need to be shared one way or another with everyone or with a group, and there's tips and tricks on that in some of the documentation and videos. But for the sake of this, I'm just going to pick Naperville, Illinois, because I know that within that service there's a layer of water bodies, and that's really what I'm trying to show you here. So water bodies from that service, here's where I can choose a frequency of providing it one time only or every 6 months. And water bodies can tend to change, so maybe I would do it every 6 months. There are some tricks and tips for doing it sooner than 6 months if you want to see the videos and read the doc. Anyway, if I choose every 6 months, it's going to want some other information from me, like in this case, the label field. And so when I click on SQL and I scroll up, these are those parameters that we talked about a minute ago. Now, if you're using the downloadable prep tools, they're going to look the same thing, only you do it in Pro or ArcMap. Here, you're just doing it online with your service. So it's the same sort of properties, principle rather. So if I want to do a query to identify lakes, ponds, and reservoirs, I can click the SQL and I can just build my query. Like for instance, type equals lakes or ponds. And that's going to reach in there and pull out those 28 of 40 features and let me identify those. Maybe I have some rivers and streams too. So I'm just going to go through and sort of define my parameters here and apply. So that's going to get me the 28 plus 12 features. I don't really have anything else in this layer, but I do need to have a label. So if I scroll down and pick name, that means I'm done with this. So I've defined water bodies as something I'm going to provide. There's a check mark over here. It's in the form of a service, and I'm sort of done with that piece. So let me show you the other half of that, which is if I want to provide something from an ArcGIS server service. So maybe I want to do parcels from a public-facing ArcGIS server service. Now, in this scenario, this is kind of interesting because many people have open data out there. And this is the best and easiest way to get your open data put into our system. So if you happen to know the REST endpoint, you can type it in, but maybe you don't yet. So I'm just going to jump over to the open data portal here. I'm going to go to open data, and I'm just going to show you how easy this can be. Now I'm just looking for some test data, and I happen to know that there's some in Oregon. So if I just search for parcels Oregon, and of course your search is different, right? You go to your own portal if this is something that you have. But anyway, when I'm finding that there's the parcel layer, there's Deschutes County in Oregon, and there's some tax lots. That looks pretty promising for my test. And it looks like updated a couple of days ago. There's 101,000 records in it. That looks good so far. If I go down to the API and grab the geo service and just copy that, what I can do is I can just show you real quick what that looks like. Now, I'm going to erase this query because I kind of want to show you the REST endpoint here directly. So when I go to that REST endpoint, this is what many of you are familiar with seeing. There's a feature layer, it's polygons, it's found in the county assessor map. This is pretty authoritative. This is my example is I'm from the county, and this is what I want to provide. So that all looks good. I'm going to just copy that URL, and I'm going to go back. Whoops. To here, which is my URL, and paste that in and click OK. So all I've done is I've just grabbed that REST endpoint from my open data site. It resolves to tax lots. There's those 101,000 features. Everything looks great. Probably every 6 months is very appropriate here because parcels may change as the county changes as well. If I had a query, I could put it in like I did last time. In this case, I'm pretty much done. So I have those two layers as services. I'm ready to provide them. I click the upload button, and here I want to redirect your attention to that other service subscription that I had previously set up that I mentioned, those boundaries. If you wanted to include us fetching those boundaries at this point, you could. You don't have to, but you could. And once I'm ready, I get a little summary. If I did have some zipped geodatabase features, it would be listed here as well. In this case, I'm just providing a couple of layers with services, and there's the feature count, and everything looks great. So I can just go ahead and click confirm. And at this point, it just goes through the process of setting up our sort of your properties of your service into our database, and we go and we fetch it soon. So this is sort of the way of providing services. You start to get emails that tells you about your contribution. You log back into the Community Maps contributor app, and it tells you your status and where you are with all of those layers, and life is good, right, Seth? Life is good at this point. So what I'd like to do is just sort of redirect your attention back to the bubble sheet here with our landing page. This is our main page for the program. This encapsulates everything that we've talked about. These are the 3 ways that you can interact. Each piece has more details. As you move from left to right, you're sort of having deeper engagement with us with respect to logging in and registering and all of that. And when we think about this kind of bigger picture, and I'm going to go back here, Seth, I'm just going to do this last page, and that is our summary. So bigger picture, this is all ways to improve the base map. And maybe that should have been plural, base maps, because this could be more than one of the maps. And when you participate, you tell us with the feedback map, you draw that box, or you show us, like Seth showed with creating that middle school features. That was really cool. Or you send us that authoritative data, and you use the contributor app to do that. And the key takeaway, if nothing else, is our landing page. Go to communitymaps.arcgis.com. That's where you're going to find all the help, all the other information, and that's sort of where you want to go as one of the next steps. So I guess if you're not attending this live, this is how you reach us, communitymaps@esri.com. But I believe we might have some questions online.
Yes, so thank you, Mike, and thank you, Seth. I think on behalf of all of us, we're excited about what you just shared with us, and hopefully if those listeners are not already a part of the program, once they log off today, they become a part of it. So before we walk into these questions, I do want to just do a few housekeeping things. We do have a handout that you'll find in the panel, and that does include some of the links that Seth and Mike shared today, including the Learn Lesson link. So if you want to go ahead and get started with that, please reference the reference document. In addition, just one last reminder about our survey, and also that our session will be recorded and emailed to you within 1 to 2 weeks. So with that, let's jump into some of the questions that we've received from our customers. If anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat. But let's kick this off. Can I download data that was created with the editor app?
That's a great question. Let me take this one,
Sure.
Mike. So the data that gets added through the editor app is available for download. Only the data that's created and approved by Esri. So we are looking at all of the content, and on a weekly basis, we're looking at it and approving or rejecting if there's some junk, some play data that gets put in there. The approved data does get packaged into a service that is available on the group. So as you log into that group, you can actually access a layer, and you can either download the entire thing, which will be all of the data that was created in the application, or you can open the map and zoom in and just capture the data for your campus. It's really kind of neat.
Awesome. And our next question is, I have 10 roads in a subdivision. Can I just draw a feedback box around the area, or do I need to give specifics?
Okay, maybe I ought to take that one. So the question was about number of edits, and do I show them in feedback? How do I give you that feedback? So what you would not want to do is be vague with the feedback. maps. You want to be very specific. So a box around 10 features and you say, something changed here. That's not good enough. That's just going to take too long for us to make that change. And that's what we're looking for is specific. So you tell us which road changed. You draw a little box around that road and tell us the name changed. And then you draw another little box around that other road and you tell us that one changed. So be as specific as possible. And Seth, I guess there would be a limit. Like if I had 50 changes or something where I drew a box around a park and said the park was missing 10 basketball courts, maybe at some point I'd want to just use the editor app, wouldn't I?
Yep, that makes sense.
So you sort of have to gauge that, but be as specific as you possibly can with the feedback maps.
Thanks, Mike. I think that's great advice, especially for quickening the process of getting these features added into the base maps. Our next question is, can I contribute both gdb.zip and service layers at the same time?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Okay. All right, no problem. So the question was about providing both service and GDB features, and the answer is yes, absolutely, you can. We call that a mixed contribution only because it's a mix of services and zipped up geodatabase feature classes. So you absolutely can. The one thing you want to think about though is just sort of the pattern of reoccurrence. Like if you're going to be providing something regularly, you may just want to point to the service rather than rerunning the data prep tools, often. So just think about possibly migrating and considering using the service option as you move forward. But for now, definitely any sort of mixed contribution is fine.
Awesome. So it's good to know that you can do multiple ways to contribute. I think the bottom line is just try, right? And then if there are questions, of course, use the communitymaps@esri.com to ask what might be the best way.
Yep.
I guess final question coming from us is, how can I tell who has contributed within an area on the community map?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Sometimes a user might be looking at the base map in ArcGIS Online, and they might wonder, where is that information coming from? And there's a couple of ways. In the bottom right-hand corner in ArcGIS Online, the base map viewer, sometimes you'll see there's a few names of organizations. Actually, I'm just going to show this if we don't mind. If I go to, I think you've got this map open right here. So I'm just going to use this as an example. If I'm here, I can actually see in the bottom right-hand side, there are some citations or what we call map attributions. And this is showing that there's some content coming from the city of Houston, the Texas Parks and Wildlife, and then of course we've got some commercial content. That's one way that you can get there. The other way is that from our Living Atlas website, if I go to livingatlas.arcgis.com, there is a community map component within this. And if I go to contribute, that's on the front, this is kind of a neat way just to kind of see all of the communities that are part of the program. If I click on the community map tab in the middle, this has got some great material. I hope everybody would go here and read up on things to learn kind of what the program is. But we do have a map that's in the middle of this. It's taking a little time to refresh, but it is showing a dot for all of our contributors throughout the world, and we've got some all over the place that are contributing. And some of them are actually, these are active contributions. So these are some areas where we've got data that is in production at this point. That's an orange dot. So there is the capability of zooming in and finding out, who might be a community contributor in or around your neighborhood.
That's really powerful. And as you move back over to the PowerPoint, I guess I just want a comment that it is this contribution, not just of our, our third-party data providers, but also through the contributions of those on the line with us today that make our base maps powerful. And it's not just per se a city who would benefit from this, perhaps like a real estate agent would benefit, or the tourism department as well. So it's really great to see what we can do when we're all start to work together. So with that, I want to thank Mike and Seth for joining us today, and also to invite you all to our next spatial data webinar, where we'll be talking about our on-premise data products, including StreetMap Premium, World Geocoder, and our data appliance. That'll take place on October 23rd. In addition, we also have, we went too fast. We have a number of resources for you to follow along with. So if you'd like to visit Living Atlas or ArcGIS.com, as Seth just shared with you, join our newsletter, Living Atlas Gens, or participate in our GeoNet community, or learn more from the ArcGIS blog or Twitter handle. All of those are on the resources document that we shared with you today. So we enjoy your participation, not only in our webinars, but also in our other channels as well. So with that, I want to thank you all for joining us, and I hope you've learned a lot from Seth and Mike today. I know I sure have. And so we'll see you next time at our Spatial Data webinar series. And until then, happy mapping.